me her path to starting to live sober. She introduced me to her boyfriend, and with an excitement on her face, man, she told me her story. Eventually, I couldn't help but ask, and so I did. As soon as she finished asking, I was like, "Hey, how's your sister?" And her smile went away, and she looked at me, she said, "You didn't hear?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, 6 months ago, she overdosed and died." And it broke my heart. You see, Calissa had gotten clean because she got pregnant. As soon as she adopted out the baby, she went back to it and she started using it at the rate that she was already using beforehand, and immediately it killed her. At that moment, I thought, you know what? I need to start doing something about it. And that was a lot of the catalyst for this program that you've seen here tonight. You see, the decisions that someone makes oftentimes earlier in their life determines who they're going to become. And I can tell you this, as a dad, every single person that suffers from a drug addiction is someone's son, daughter, mother, father, family member, or best friend. And socioeconomic backgrounds, race, gender, what school you went to, which community you were raised in, all of that is thrown out the window. It doesn't apply anymore. Drugs affect people from all different kinds of backgrounds. The other reason I put this up is I was talking to someone that suffered from a heroin addiction, and he was coming out, he was 57 days clean when I met him at a rehab facility. And basically I said, "Well, tell me your story. Did you just I said, congratulations on being 57 days clean." He said, "Don't congratulate me. I've got a lot of work still to do." He said, 90% of us that come out of rehab suffering from a heroin addiction, we go back to it because of the grip that it ends up having on our minds, right? Like we drive by some place we used to get high or see someone we got high with, and that's all we can start thinking about. He said, "So I've got a lot of work to do." And that broke my heart, number one, because they say 1 out of 10 people that suffer from a hard drug addiction ever seek rehab. So they're saying 1 out of 100 may end up getting to that point. So there's a lot of people that we never even see or hear about. I said, "Well, how'd you start? Did you start slamming heroin?" And it started elementary school, and he led me down his entire path. And then he stopped, and he said, "You know what? I would like to think that if someone, whenever I was in elementary school, would have noticed me coming to school hungover on Monday morning, smelling of alcohol, and said, 'Eric, this isn't okay. Let me help you out.'" He said, "I would like to think in middle school, whenever I'd come back from my school break smelling of marijuana, that a teacher would say, 'Eric, man, this isn't okay.'" He said, "Not once in my entire childhood, with all of the signs that were there, not once did someone say, 'This isn't okay.'" I'm going to leave with the challenge. See, my girls, they're going to have to make their own decisions someday. And here's what I can promise you. If somebody sees them walking down the wrong path, and someone starts seeing them make improper decisions of addiction at an early age, at middle school and high school, whatever it may be, I hope someone will say, "Reagan, Lily, this isn't okay." My information's on the screen. If there's anything that I can ever do to help you out, you can shoot me an email. You can give me a call. You can follow me on social media. I'm on all different kinds of social media accounts at @TPRPURDY. And hopefully together we can start spreading a word of prevention. Because if we can help one person walk down that path, I believe that we can start making an impact several years down the road when it comes to addiction. So with that, does anybody have any questions that I can answer for you really quick? Yes, sir.
I got one for you. I'm stupid when it comes to drugs.
Oh, no, you're fine.
You had said before, and I'm a child of the 40s and 50s, all right? So by the 60s, I was in college. You said at that time, marijuana was about 3%. Today, it's between 15 and 20.
15, yeah, all the way, there's been some up in the 30%.
When it was 3%, people were getting high.
Yes, sir.
Today, and you had said this also, that the hemp that we've okayed in our state is about 3%, which is what it was in the 60s. And yet we're making food items with hemp. Now, aren't we just a little bit pregnant?
Well, I don't think the THC concentration is really small, and they're not going for the buds in the marijuana in the hemp. It's a completely different thing. Yeah, I want to make sure that people understand that the marijuana of today, because unfortunately what we end up doing is we say, "You know what? I tried it in 1960s and I ended up fine," right? You've ended up fine, right? But unfortunately there's a lot of people that end up trying it, and so what I don't want to see is someone say, "I tried it in the 60s, no big deal." It is a completely different thing today whenever we start looking at marijuana.
But in the 60s it was a gateway also.
Okay?
That's my point. My point is, aren't we saying okay to things we should question saying okay to?
Yeah, I mean, hemp's legal, so I'm not going to get onto hemp. I just want to understand, like the marijuana of today, marijuana of the 60s, it's like apples and oranges. Anybody else have any other questions? I appreciate your time, appreciate your attention with it. I'm going to turn it over. If there's anything I can do for y'all, let me know. Thanks.
Then we're going to have Dr. Sweet. She's just going to touch on, like, in her profession as a psychiatrist. Just, she's going to be like about 10 minutes, kind of touching on some things. And
psychiatry and addiction, and he's talking about these dabs. THC content of 80-some%, it is a very psychoactive substance. And in my business, I've seen people have a lot of long-term effects from that. Also, K2. Have y'all heard of the rat poison that kids? Have had it in Kentucky. K2 is something they spray and make the synthetic marijuana. And essentially, it's like rat poison when it gets contaminated with that, and they literally bleed to death out their eyes, out their ears, out their nose. We've had some of that. I don't know if we've had deaths in Kentucky, but we definitely have had that around here recently. Oh, sorry. This is talking to teens. I got 1,000 of them. Sorry. It should be under T. Talking to teens right there. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Don't worry, the PowerPoint's just to remind me. And the same thing with bath salts. So in my business, sometimes I see people who were kids doing stuff, because that's when you mess your mind up a little bit. If you do anything addicting, that's why these e-cigarettes, their nicotine content is huge. I don't know if y'all are aware of that. And so we're a little bit afraid of how getting sensitized to that in your teenage brain, because your brain isn't all the way cooked until you're 25. We know that for a fact. And if you mess it up before it's all the way cooked, then you're going to have a lot more trouble in the long run. And what he's talking about, is it not pulling up? And so this is why things like this are super important. We want to catch this before it gets out of control. And it's one of my missions in life to make sure that all kids, when they go to any doctor, get screened for substance use problems from the age 12 on. But I also know that sometimes 12, it's a little bit too late. But I think we definitely need to be doing that. So I was asked to just a few minutes, because psychiatry is my primary, and I do a lot of addiction work, is something a little bit about, he's told you, finding the purple drink and finding all this stuff, or finding these funny looking, all this stuff he's got up here, well then what do we do? Oh, back up. Y'all gonna watch me fall, because I've got the wrong shoes on for outside. And I know somebody's made bets on if I hit the ground or not, and they'll probably be right. So how do I advance this? So this is just mostly for me to be able to talk about it. So there's a couple of things. One of the things that we see a lot of is you find the beer cans in your 14-year-old's room, and they're just boys. It's going to be all right, it's not a problem. And he kind of hit on this. One of the things we want to make sure is that we're addressing this, because what happens is that 14-year-old boy with the beers hid in his room ends up being that 27-year-old man, or Willie, like he was talking about earlier, where they went so far down addiction that it's really hard to come back. So we want to try to impact that, beforehand. And so this is just a little tiny bit on how to talk when you find out or suspect that your teen is on drugs. And so this is just a little bit on how to use this. So my big thing is to stay calm, because what's going to happen is you're going to come in and they're going to be high, and you are going to lose your mind, right? I mean, just lose it. Well, one thing we know is people don't listen when you're screaming and hollering. And people can't listen when they're high. And so one of the things I want to talk about is, how do you talk to kids? How do you have this conversation? And I think that's important for people to know. And I'm not saying be their friend, because you're supposed to be their parent. Or if you're their guardian, you're supposed to be their guardian. You're not their friend. You have to tell them, help guide them. And one thing I'll say is, one of the best things you can do is lead by example, because that old do what I say and not what I do doesn't work so well, because you're the number one people that they're going to be looking up to their entire lives. So this is just really quick. One of the first things I would talk about is whoever your co-parent is, if you're a guardian, or if, the kid, if you're separated, divorced, or whatever, get on the same page with that other person. If there's another person in that child's life that's parenting them, and get on the same page, because you both have to have a united front. You all might not agree on what's going on, but the important thing is you have a united front when you talk to them. You get on the same page about how to talk with them, because what's going to happen is, how many people have had a kid that if you say they can't go spend the night, they go to daddy. I mean, it's just part of life. They're gonna learn how to play people off of each other. So there needs to be a united front, and you need that support. This is a very stressful time. I've taken care of a lot of people on the psychiatry side dealing with children with substance use problems or unfortunately deaths, that kind of stuff. And so it's a very stressful time on you. You need that support. One thing I'll say before you talk to them is prepare, kind of know what's going to be coming up. Don't do this off the cuff, that's important. Set realistic goals for how you want to talk to them. Do y'all know what I mean by that? So what do you want to accomplish out of this first conversation you have with them? So you need to kind of think about that before you talk to kids, because they are smart and they can trick you and they can lead you down places that you didn't mean to go in your conversation. So you're there to have a point. And so you need to be able to set that. And then spell out rules and consequences. These are who when I'm talking about the co-parents. So you all know. So if they do this, then this is going to happen. And both parents are on board with that, or both guardians or whoever's on board with that. Because again, they'll play favorites, play sides on you. So big thing is to be calm. Do not have that conversation when you're still upset. That's easier said than done. I come from really hot-tempered people, and really, being able to stay calm in the midst of conflict is not a problem. But that's really important in this, especially with teenagers. You need to take the time. If you're very angry or if you're anxious, I mean, this is anxiety provoking too. You need to kind of take the time to calm down and collect yourself. And that's kind of that stuff I was talking about before. That gives you time to collect yourself before you're talking to the teen. Make sure there's no distractions and that child knows that you all are talking specifically. It's about this kid, not playing on your phone, not taking phone calls when you have this conversation. That means that this isn't important to you. And we all know that this is important. This is how you keep kids from keeping on down this path. And so I've got here postures to communicate. And so, where's one? I'm going to get Juanita. She said so postures to communicate. So you want to scream and holler and yell and stuff. So how is it that somebody's going to listen to you, especially if they're a teenager? So Juanita, so just try to say anything.
You're the kid or I'm the kid?
You're the kid. What? Try to talk to me. Well, why'd you do that?
Why? Why'd you do that?
Well, you need to just sit down right now, because I can't believe you've lied to me again. I can't believe. The child's not. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's what we want to do. We want to lord over people a little bit, and it's not comfortable, is it? No, it's not comfortable at all. So it's important to at least sit down, get on their level. Don't point. These are the rules of engagement. You can use this on your husband too, just so y'all know. These are the rules of engagement, right? The second that you say you're not going to listen to a thing anybody else says, because you're on the defensive. So don't scream, don't holler, don't kind of lord over them, don't point. Get down on their level, talk to them, because really what you want to do in this moment, you want this to be a teaching moment, and I'm not saying be their friend, but you want to listen to them. Because there's lots of reasons why people are using drugs, but you want to listen. You want them to know that this is a relationship, that you're going to listen to what's going on with them. And they've done something, they've been caught, there's something wrong, but you want them to be able to come to you when stuff happens. Is that always going to happen? No. But it's going to be much more likely if you talk to them and let them know that you're listening, rather than if you're standing over them screaming and reprimanding them before you can even make it, because they're not going to talk to you. I've got a teenager. They don't talk to me. He tries his best not to. He laughed at me when I said what I was going to come here and talk about tonight, so if that makes any sense. After I said, well, he says, is it for work? And I said, no, it's community service. He said, what did you do? I said, so I've failed on parenting in that department, clearly, that he thinks community service is only if you get in trouble. And so you can see here, true story. Try to see their point of view. These are all the rules of engagement, even with your husband. Try to see their point of view. Not that what they're doing is right, but they'll often start telling you kind of stuff that's going on in their life at that point. A lot of kids with substance use problems have psychological problems too. They're very anxious and they're drinking for that. Is that a reason? We want to nip that. We want to get them into treatment to fix that. They're trying to be cool. They're not around a lot of kids that accept them. So these kids over here, I mean, they're probably selling them stuff. They can hang out there. So this is where you find that out. So make sure you ask open-ended questions. And so that's not questions like, did you do this? That's more like, how did this happen? You know, that kind of stuff, open-ended, so that'll open the conversation. Be prepared, they probably won't talk to you, but I'm just trying to give you a few little hints on how to do that, because I don't think my son's talked to me in about 3 years, so that's just how it is. So I really want to, and it's getting late, so I'm just going to put in here, I really think the big part is listen. When you're having this conversation, is listen. Let them know that you care about them, and that you might be upset, but the reason why you're upset is their well-being. And you can say that all you want. If they don't feel it, it's not going to be part of it. And part of that is listening to them, and not screaming and yelling and, you know, throwing them out or something like that. Show their concern. And I'm talking about teenagers at this point. And the other part is thank them for actually talking to you. Because having a good that shows respect to them. And thank them for talking to you about this. That seems kind of silly, I know, but it's really important, especially in somebody who's trying to come into their own as a teenager. They're growing up trying to be grown. That's really important because it shows mutual respect. Even though you're still the parent, I'm not saying be their friend and go party with them. You're still going to put down the law with them, but it helps with opening up that conversation. They're going to lie. I mean, most of the time, they're going to lie. They didn't do it. And this a little bit is, you just talk about the value of truth and how you value truth. And, you know, people make mistakes as long as you tell the truth. This is just stuff that we know. Focus on the behavior. Don't start saying you're a liar. You're nothing but a dirty liar like your daddy. You know, that right there, you've just devalued that child. You've just devalued that child more. But we all know, we've seen people do it. We've all know seen people do it. Find out why they're lying. Sometimes they kind of get caught in a trap of lies that they just cannot get out of. We all have seen that with not just teenagers, but adults too. They'll lie so much they get caught up, and there's no way they'll ever dig out of that lie. And that's where when I say consider immunity, I don't mean immunity due to what they've done, like the substance use. I mean like for the lie. Like finally just say, okay, I'm not going to punish you for, you know, just tell me the truth. Because sometimes they just get so caught up in it that they just can't get out. And if you just offer them some immunity to prosecution, that'll help. And then reward them in the future when they're honest with you. That's going to be important. That doesn't mean you set down your boundaries, but reward them. After the meeting, this is really important because you're still pretty hot. You need to think about your conversation, because this is not where the conversation stops by any means. You need to think about how the conversation went. Did they speak to you at all? Did it go well? Did you lose your temper? And think about this, because these are going to be conversations you need to continue having with your children. And then and what's next? And the Officer Purdy kind of put that. This is not something we say, because sometimes people think, oh, I don't want to get them, because I'm an addiction specialist, I don't want to bring them into treatment because then they're labeled. Then this is happening, then it looks like it's a real problem. It's a real problem if your kid's using drugs. It's already a problem. So that doesn't mean you go drop them off at some high level of care, but at least have an assessment done of some kind, or talk to their primary care doctor. I'm really big in making sure we get these screenings and stuff in the primary care doctor, so somebody can assess what kind of problem it is, so we can kind of nip it when they're younger, and help them go down a path where they don't end up like Willie and that kind of stuff, because that's super important. And there's lots of resources. We got all kinds of resources. They done took their stuff down. Bluegrass, Mountain Comp, all these places, they tend to do assessments. It's really important to kind of intervene. Because let's face it, most of the time the teenagers won't listen to you, but they might listen to somebody else. They might not listen to their doctor either, but then they can have me up there talking to them about the rat poison when you're bleeding out your eyes. That might give you a little pause, I'll be honest, because unfortunately I've seen it. And I wanted to leave you, and this is just a few minutes because we're running over on time. If you're writing stuff down, almost everything, this bottom one, drugfree.org, the stuff I'm talking about, you can actually look at videos of people having these conversations with their kids and how that goes, and every kid's different. But SAMHSA, the one on top, I think I've got that spelled right. You can go on there and get pamphlets for every single drug and how to talk to your teenager about that specific drug, methamphetamine, and it's all free. All those are free. So if y'all are looking for resources for that, it's there. And then the other one is drugabuse.gov. So just let them know you love them, but still be their parent, still be firm, and listen. That's probably the biggest thing, is when I see people in their 20s and 30s, they say, nobody ever listened to me, nobody ever cared, nobody listened. They told me what to do, but they didn't listen. So just listening doesn't mean you're going to do what they tell you to do, or let them do what they want to do, but just listening, that is key in part of this. So that's my recommendation. And the other thing is, if you have a really strong addiction history in your family, it's probably good for your children to know that because they are much greater risk. There's a little controversy over not glorifying drug use, but if there's a lot of people with a lot of severe addiction problems, it's not good to hide that from teenagers. They need to know that they are at greater risk of developing addiction if they start using these substances. So I know y'all want to go home. We've got.
All right. Reverend Marvin King's going to come up. He said he just needs 5 minutes. But I wanted to thank everybody for coming out. I'm not going to hold you when he gets done. But thank everybody for coming out and Trooper Purdy for coming out. As you all know, he'll be back in November. I think it's November 8th, I believe. November 8th for dangers of social media. Our superintendent, Paul Christie, said that's a #1 issue in our school system. Is the social media. So spread the word. We're going to have it inside that time and still a dinner. So I'm going to turn it over to Marvin King.
Thank you, sir. Yep. All right. I also want to thank Officer Purdy for the presentation tonight, and I want to thank all of you for making the time on a Thursday night to come out and to share and to learn about all the dangers that exist in plain sight in our community. If you were sitting there like I was sitting there thinking that I became really stirred up on the inside and became more aware about all these things that are just sitting under our nose. And so I want to challenge us tonight and encourage us. We are a community that is dealing with a tremendous problem with substance abuse, drug addiction, and it's starting at such an early age. And we have an opportunity to come together as a community to get our young people while they are young, to let them know they are valued, to give them a sense of hope so that they have options to not go down a path of substance abuse. As Officer Purdy talked about tonight, there are many children that turn to drugs, whether it's soft drugs starting out, because no one paid attention, because no one cared, because they didn't feel like they had a voice or valued. And we have to, as a community, get back to the point where we are literally raising our children as a community so that when we go to ball games, when we go to social events, when we go to outings, it's a community raising our children. There was a day and time, some of us who are baby boomers and Generation Xers can remember a time when everyone on the street knew your name. And when you were doing something in the neighborhood, it got home before you did. Y'all remember that? We live in a community that's still that tight-knit. And we as community persons and residents have to be innovative, like Brian said, and get outside of the box and support various initiatives and organizations within our community, whether it's our volunteer time, whether it's our finances and other resources. We've got to enable organizations and persons who are called to this challenge and help them and equip them to help us with this problem. And so in my remarks tonight, I want to challenge you. What can you do wherever you are in your sphere of influence to enable or to help someone make a difference? How can we help a teacher with resources at our schools? How can we help our school system? How can we bring additional programs, insights, and opportunities to our young people to give them choices to make healthy decisions so they don't make the bad decisions as teenagers? We as a community have to get on the front lines and not be passive and sit in the background, but actively take initiative to support, not just with our words, but with our actions, and to find the resources to make our community great. And so my word to us tonight, this is the first of many lectures, presentations that we're going to see over the course of the next few months. Invite someone out so that their discontent can be stirred to make our community better. I don't want to see another person in Clark Regional Hospital OD because of drugs. I don't want to see another child whose dreams have been thwarted because no one gave them any time and no one paid attention. There are children right now, we need mentors in our schools. An hour of our time can change and shape the destiny of a child's life forever. And we want to see our community be at its best. So, again, thank you tonight. I hope that this presentation has stirred you like it has stirred me. And I hope that we leave here better, inspired, and committed to make a positive difference in our community. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. And then, like I say, November is Danger Social Media. We'll be moving the banners around the schools and flyers, newspapers. So, but I appreciate everybody coming.